Hello YouTube, this is Gizmo88 with another high definition review of the Sony, and as you may have guessed it, this is the Sony PlayStation. This is Sony's first system and also its first console. It's a 32-bit system, features CD optical drive for the storage. Now it is subject to a number of issues that they did have, especially with the original model. And they even had some with the more slim PSone model, but I'll get to that in a minute. On this model, it's pretty big. It's bigger than the Dreamcast. It's bigger than the Sega Saturn. It's pretty well. It's not quite as big as the Sega CD and Genesis combination. It's probably about, I don't know, I'm gonna say a quarter of an inch shorter. You know, it's not quite as in lengthwise, you know, in width, you know. But it is pretty big, and even the drive door is big on it. I mean, it's actually odd, I think, that they made it as big as they did, because to be honest with you, there's not much to this system. It's mostly a hollowed out unit. Because all you got right here in the center is an optical drive, and then you got a motherboard that just goes all the way across the bottom of the system, which is actually ridiculous. But that's what they did, and it worked. I'll give them that. It features two controller ports, which is very, I wouldn't say unique for Sony, but it is definitely a characteristic of a Sony PlayStation system. Now it has two memory card slots. Now the memory cards probably about that big, about like that, and they're like that long. So they're pretty good sized memory cards too. Everything about it's just big and bulky. The more slim memory card it does a little bit oval on the front side, or on the side that sticks out, but it's about the same size. It's just oval. Now it does have three buttons. It's got power, open, and then the original actually has a reset button, which was removed on the slim. Now on the back, it's just a power cable that comes out for plug-in, and there's no box, so the power supply is on the inside. Now the basically has what they call like an AV input, and that's for, you know, RF. Composite and S-Video. And S-Video was something newer that they started doing, which also the Nintendo 64 also has, but they started doing it on different devices. Now on this particular thing, one inconvenience that they had with it was the fact that the memory cards were right above the controllers. And as big as this thing is, you know, Sony could have changed that, but they didn't. But with the memory card in, it made it very difficult to pull a controller out, or to unplug the controller. And so a lot of times you had to pull your memory card out to pull your controller out, which I have the slim version, and I have to do that because it's just so hard to get the controller out. Now, the issues I had with this was the drive motors. The disc were constantly running it. I mean, as with all CD systems, you know, the disc always spin, but usually now, like nowadays, it's always the drive has a variable speed, you know. So if it needs to load more, it'll speed up so it can load more data, you know. So you got, like back in, I think that Sony PlayStation had like a 10 or a 12x drive. It really wasn't real fast, but it did well for what it did. It really didn't have a lot of load times, but did have some. But the biggest issue, like I said, was the drive. I mean, I've seen them where the drive, you know, the thing might come on, but the drive does absolutely nothing. I've seen them where they're like the optical drive in them's just dead. The reader don't work, the drive don't spin. You know, you turn it on, you get the BIOS and everything, and that'd be it. You can load a memory card in, and be it. Now I've also seen them where the ball bearings come out of the spindle, and then it won't spin the disc anymore. So those were just some of the known issues, and they did have some reader issues too. But another thing I wanted to mention is, you know, the Nintendo 64 versus the PlayStation. Now, I like PlayStation, I like Nintendo, and I like Sega, so just to let you know, I don't favor any systems here. But as for who dominated the market, a lot of people say, well, PlayStation or Sony dominated the market. Well, I want to clarify some things here. If you look at the actual statistics on sales for both of them, it was pretty much a tie. They actually tied in sales. Now, back in the day, or pretty much even now, they don't really consider ties, you know. If they have to get down to, you know, the lowest number they can get to, they'll do that, just to make it, just to see who dominated. But technically, it was a tie. Nobody dominated anybody between the two. They both dominated. They both dominated the same way. However, in terms of reliability, the Nintendo 64 has a significant lead over the PlayStation. One thing about the 64 is most of them are still around. Pretty much almost all of them, if not all of them, still work. With the PlayStation, about half of them to 3/4 of them are only half to 3/4 of them work. There's at least a quarter to half of them to have. At least a good quarter anyway, that they don't work no more, that the optical drives just quit on them or something like that. Now, with the slim version, it has that external power supply, which actually has a box in the wire, which is a little bit different. As you notice, like I said, with the memory cards, still the same. Now, they did have some drive issues with these too. The readers had some issues, and then because they actually sped them up a little bit. They actually made them load just a little bit faster, which kind of wore on the reader a little bit. So you don't see a lot of these slims around. You see mostly the older ones. But these buttons will also like to stick on these slim designs. Now I want to mention on the slim, it's called the PS1 rather than PlayStation. It still takes the same memory cards. Basically, the only difference is the size. The controller is a little bit different too. It's a different color. Now, one thing I want to mention is the control sticks and the analog button, which originally they didn't have. Also, L1, L2, R1, and R2, which are both on the PlayStation. Which is standard on all PlayStations. But rather than actually having a flexible control stick, they just had the buttons, which was a little bit different. Now with the 64, they had the start, well, they had start and select on here. Now you can kind of say that they stole Nintendo's technology, because they were working with Nintendo to make optical drives for the Super Nintendo CD add-on or Super Famicom CD add-on, where they basically ran off on Nintendo, forcing Nintendo to cancel the project. And then the next thing we all know is Sony is working on the PlayStation. So it's been said that Sony took the technology and went and built their own system. Now, Nintendo could have filed suit against them and probably could have won, because I don't think it would have been that hard to prove that they did that. Although I will admit, Sony is a good company. They did have excellent games. Like I said, I have both. Matter of fact, I have Dreamcast, I have Saturn, I have 64, I have PlayStation, I have PlayStation 2, I have PlayStation 3. I also have GameCube, I have Wii. And out of all of them, I still say, and obviously my opinion, but the 64 still, outnumbers the PlayStation in terms, of reliability. It's not just sales that matter, It's in terms of how long the system's going to last. I mean, when the reader is sitting there running all the time, instead of with most CD-based systems, even the older ones like the Sega CD and the Neo Geo CD, and even the Atari Jaguar CD, they actually would load the data into the RAM of the system, and it would run off the RAM of the system rather than running it off the disk, so that way it wouldn't be loading all the time. Well, with the PlayStation, they kind of fumbled that idea. Anyway, this concludes our review of the Sony PlayStation.